Hey guys, thanks for joining me for my gold, silver, and fiat currency course. I hope you've been following each chapter. I'm making this course for two main reasons. One, to better inform and educate my subscribers. So check right now and make sure you're subscribed. I know most YouTubers say it all the time and mention it over and over, but I rarely do. I hate asking, but it helps the algo and it brings more people like you and me into it. The other reason is to better inform and educate myself. So this is kind of a shared experience together. So feel free to comment with any information you'd like. You can thank me, you can criticize me, you can correct me, and let me know if I missed anything or if you want to just say hi. So let's get started. My idea of this course is not to overwhelm you with information. I don't want this to feel like a boring middle school style history report. I just want to inform everyone with key details, historical importance, and key dates to watch out for when you're coin hunting. The peace dollar was first minted in 1921 to replace the 1921 Morgan dollar and to help replace the 270 million Morgan dollars that were melted down to help Great Britain in World War I. Great Britain faced near collapse due to runs on silver, mainly in India, but in overall, Britain wasn't doing too well. Britain entered World War I in August 1914 and thought it would be over by Christmas, but it lasted over 4 years. I discussed the 1918 Pittman Act in the previous chapter. Please watch that chapter if you haven't already, but I'm trying to move through these chapters without repeating myself too many times. So the peace dollar was also minted to commemorate the end of World War I. The original design on the reverse of the 1921 peace dollar included an eagle clutching a broken sword. At the time, a lot of people felt that the broken sword symbolized defeat, not peace or victory, so the sword was removed from the master hub before working dies or coins were made. Given the trauma of the Great War, which is what World War I was called before World War II, Americans were highly sensitive about their national symbols. So if you see any broken sword peace dollars, be aware no authentic broken sword peace dollars have ever surfaced. Also, all of the 1921 peace dollars were minted in high relief and had the fifth lowest mintage. Only 1,006,473 were minted. And because they were all struck in high relief, which is difficult to strike, strong strikes are scarce, and most of them show signs of wear. Even ones with heavy wear can fetch up to $100 or more because of their collectability. They are the most desired peace dollars of all. The years with the highest mintages are 1922 to 1925, with the exception of the 1924S having a mintage of only 1.7 million. Oddly, the 1926S has a mintage of almost 7 million. A full list of mintages and varieties will be at the end of this video. So due to World War I and the Pittman Act, the price of silver on the open market was actually higher than the face value stamped on the silver dollar. For an example, between 1919 and 1921, the price of silver hovered around $1.50 an ounce. So if you take $1.50 and multiply it by 0.7734, you get $1.16. That means there was 16% extra silver in a Morgan dollar than the face value of $1. And 16 cents was a lot of money back then. It's equal to about $3.50 of purchasing power today. So just imagine, theoretically, you could get free lunch on the arbitrage of a melted Morgan. How plausible that actually was probably up to your determination, I guess, but this became an issue when the peace dollars were first released. They were instantly hoarded. And you know the saying, this is why we can't have nice things? Well, silver dollars are a great example for that. Silver dollars were always hoarded. They almost never made it into actual circulation. Very few made it in the circulation in the Midwest and East. They mainly circulated in the West. So a slicked out Morgan or seeded silver dollar, if they could talk, just imagine the stories they would tell. It wasn't a bad idea to make a new dollar coin out of silver. It was the policies and the politicians and war that led to the devaluation of the dollar. And this was 13 years before the Gold Reserve Act, which caused the dollar to lose 40% of its purchasing power overnight. Americans saw all the money they have saved up for all those years instantly lose nearly 50% of its value overnight. And I've heard a quote passed around that supposedly V.I. Lenin or Vladimir Lenin said from around this time period during the peak of the Bolshevik Revolution in 1917. And it goes something like, the way to crush the bourgeoisie is to grind them between the millstones of taxation and inflation, referring to the Bolshevik tactics that Lenin used to rally support against the provisionary government and overthrow Russia. Now, this is probably a game of telephone and a twist to something that John Maynard Keynes actually said. So in a 1919 interview, I think John Maynard Keynes actually said, Lenin is said to have declared the best way to destroy the capitalist system is to debauch the currency. By a continuing process of inflation, governments can confiscate secretly and unobserved an important part of the wealth of the citizens. Now, regardless of the origin of that saying, that should piss you off and make you decry socialism, communism forever. Their idea is to make you poor and begging while the government controls everything. But I digress. The United States became the richest country in the world by 1920. In the mid to late 20s, just before the start of the Great Depression, the money supply was increased by 60%, leading to the roaring 20s. And due to the massive post World War I industrial growth, mass production, high consumer spending, a booming stock market, the US became the leading global economic powerhouse with a total wealth more than several major nations combined. The Pittman Act pushed a massive amount of silver to be struck into coins between 1921 and 1925, and even into 1928 at a slowing pace. This is why there were so many peace dollars and other coins minted between 1922 and 1925, and fewer after 1926, with gap years of the peace dollar between 1928 and 1934. Well, in 1919, the year my grandmother was born, Sadie, silver was around $1.50, and in some countries like the US and Great Britain, the silver dollar or equivalent coin in silver was worth more than the equivalent coin in gold. For an example, here are two $1 coins. This 1889 Morgan silver dollar had a melt of about $1.21, and this 1868 $1 gold princess coin had a melt of about 96 cents. People there in the border of Mexico were actually making arbitrage, exchanging US dollars for Mexican pesos, then melting them down for bullion, selling them to the treasury for US notes, redeeming gold dollars, then exchanging those gold dollars in Mexico for two silver US dollars. I believe that's how it worked, but I'm not a scam artist and I didn't live back then, obviously. Great Britain attempted to short silver on the stock market and the money exchange market, while the United States tried everything to encourage miners to dig, dig, dig. By 1928, the silver price was down to about 58 cents an ounce. And by 1932, in the midst of the Great Depression, it was down to 28 cents per ounce. And some reports list it as low as 24 cents an ounce. And this was due to the large amount of silver that had been produced, silver manipulation in the stock market through Great Britain and the United States, a strong growing dollar, and a massive money supply injection, and a slowing demand during the Great Depression. While the end of the Pittman Act, which ended in 1928, didn't directly have an effect on 1929 and the Great Depression, its effects, like creating an artificial silver scarcity, then a booming silver production, then injection of the money supply, all were part of a complex economic backdrop of the booming 20s, which included speculative financing, easy credit, and eventually collapse, leading to the 1929 crash and depression. It's interesting to think, though, if the Pittman Act would have continued past 1928, what kind of effect it would have had on the Great Depression. In 1934, a somewhat similar act returned with the Silver Purchase Act of 1934, which helped to improve the economy by boosting silver prices and helping the mining industry. It also helped to win over Western politicians' support of FDR's New Deal, which wasn't very popular in the West. It also triggered a massive silver outflow from China, leading to deflation and an economic disruption there, ultimately forcing China to abandon their own silver standard with the yuan. This led to widespread bankruptcies, bank failures, and a severe credit crunch, particularly in the financial centers like Shanghai and Hong Kong. So this is why the Chinese silver dollars, or junk dollars as they're called, like the Fat Man dollar and the Sun Yat-sen dollars, are so rare and valuable. They were all melted down and sent over to the US to be minted into peace dollars and also mid to late 30s subsidiary coins. The Silver Purchase Act guaranteed producers a ready market for their silver, and the mint also gained a profit through monetizing cheaply purchased silver. The mint actually paid for some of the shipments of silver bullion in silver dollars. The Silver Purchase Act led to over 7 million peace dollars being struck between 1934 and 1935, and there probably would have been a lot more if they weren't all hoarded. Most of the peace dollars would stay in vaults as part of a bank's reserves, but they would see the light of day around Christmas time when people would obtain them from the bank and give them as Christmas presents. But most of the time, they would come right back to the bank in January after the holidays when people would deposit them into their bank for paper money. The mint considered striking 1936 peace dollars and even prepared the dies for them, but there was no real demand for them, so none of them were actually struck, and the master die was ordered to be destroyed in January 1937. Between 1936 and 1970, there were no dollar coins minted at all, not silver or clad, not for mint sets or proofs. Then former President Eisenhower died in 1969, and in 1971, the Eisenhower dollar was minted. It ran from 1971 to 1978. The mint released clad coins for circulation and silver ones for mint sets and proofs. But I have to back up just a little bit because there actually was a 1964 peace dollar minted. Actually, 316,106 1964 dated peace dollars were minted in 1965. But why were they minted in 1965 and dated 1964? Well, if you didn't know already, it was the same for the 90% silver dimes, quarters, and half dollars as well, but mainly for the dimes and quarters. Just look at the mintages and you'll see. There was a massive coin shortage in the mid 1960s. Everyone, even with a tiny bit of knowledge of silver, was hoarding silver coins, and this prompted Congress to authorize a date freeze, with all silver coins struck after December 31st, 1964, being dated 1964 in an effort to smoothly transition to releasing the clad coins. They knew that hoarders were going to hoard, so they continued minting and releasing silver coins dated 1964 alongside with clad ones dated 1965. This was so that hoarders would grab up all the 1964 coins and normal commerce could use the 1965 clad ones. But also, they made up for all the hoarded coins by overwhelming the hoarders with tons of silver coins. So that was the logic of minting 1964 dated coins into 1965 and even into 1966. After Kennedy was taken out of the picture, actually he was more anti-silver than history tells us, but after he was taken out, Lyndon B. Johnson pressured Congress to mint a new silver coin and authorized the production of 45 million and appropriated $600,000 to start the minting process. The Treasury officials thought that LBJ was a crazy mofo, and they weren't wrong, but they started the production and even checked with the congressman who fought against the proposal from the start, and yup, he must have threatened enough people because it passed on May 15, 1965. LBJ then issued a presidential order directing the production of the silver dollars to begin without further delay, and in the middle of a nationwide coin shortage due to silver hoarding, it passed, and he signed it into law August 3rd, 1964. So a total of 316,106 1964 peace dollars were struck at the Denver Mint. The 1964 peace dollar was identical in design to the original peace dollar. There was no change to the design at all, other than being dated 1964. But technically, these coins never really existed. All 316,106 of them were supposedly melted down and never left the mint. The mint was convinced that the coins would never enter circulation. They knew that the coins would be hoarded. And before the first 1964 peace dollar could be issued, coin shops are already running ads offering them for sale at prices as high as $7.50 a piece. The mint never issued any 1964 peace dollars, so all of those deals had to be walked back by the coin shops. There is documented proof that at least two 1964 peace dollars survived until 1970. According to Mint records, 28 out of the 30 trial strikes were melted down immediately, but the other two was sent to Washington for optical, physical, and spectrographical examination and remained there in a treasury vault until the spring of 1970. Records show that they were melted down, and 4 members of the Destruction Committee signed affidavits attesting to it. Imagine having that job, Destruction Committee. In the April 1973 issue of the Numismatist, coin dealer Bob Cohen placed a full-page ad offering $3,000 for a 1964 peace dollar. Cohen reported that the ad generated a number of intriguing responses and even tentative offers, but no actual coins. $3,000 in 1964, if you believe the LBS, is about $31,500 today. A press release issued by the Mint on May 31st, 1973 declared that since the 1964 peace dollars were never officially issued, any such coins found in the possession of a private individual will be seized as property of the United States. So if there's any out there, who's going to admit to having one if it's going to be seized? Then the Coinage Act of 1965 came, which prohibited the minting of any standard silver dollars for a 5-year period. And because of the Act's prohibition on the silver dollar and ongoing silver shortage, the order was given that all silver dollars were to be destroyed. None of the 1964 peace dollars were safe for historical purposes, not even for the National Numismatist Collection. The only thing left of the 1964 peace dollar is one single obverse master die, intended for making working dies, that sits in a vault at the Philadelphia Mint right now, and it is possibly the rarest die in the world. No dies of the obverse are known to exist. At the age of 34, Anthony DeFrancisi was the youngest of the competitors in the contest to design the peace dollar. He was also among the least experienced in the realm of coin designs, but he was chosen and won. Due to time constraints, DeFrancisi was unable to schedule a professional model to pose for his depiction of Liberty on the obverse. Instead, he opted to model the depiction of Lady Liberty after his wife. In describing his technique, he quoted, "I opened the window to my studio and let the wind blow on her hair while she was posing for me." He later stated that though his wife was the model for the coin, it did not depict a perfect likeness of her. The Liberty was not a photograph of Miss DeFrancisi, it was a composite face in a way that typifies something of America. Teresa Di Franchisi was born in Naples, Italy. In an interview, she stated that when she was only 5 years old, on a steamboat in which her and her family was immigrating to the United States on, they passed the Statue of Liberty, and she was fascinated by the statue, and she called her family over and she struck a pose imitating Lady Liberty right in front of it. She later wrote to her brother Rocco, "You remember how I was always posing as Liberty and how heartbroken I was when the other little girl got selected to play the patriotic role in school? I thought of those days while I was sitting there as a model for Tony's design, and now seeing myself as Miss Liberty on that coin, it seems like the realization of my fondest childhood dream. Where's that patriotic love of America now? It's dead." Anthony DeFrancisi died in 1964. I don't think he knew they were introducing the 1964 peace dollar. And Teresa died in 1990 on the same day he died, October 20th. Kind of weird. So at the beginning of this chapter, I mentioned the broken sword. Well, the removal of the sword from the coinage hub, which had already made it into the plaster models, was accomplished by painstaking work by mint cheap engraver George T. Morgan. Yeah, the same guy who designed the Morgan dollars. He used extremely fine engraving tools under magnification, kind of like photoshopping. Morgan's work on covering up the sword was done so well that no one even knew about it for 85 years. Between December 28th and December 31st, the Mint reported 1,006,473 pieces were struck in just 4 days. The peace dollar was released into circulation on January 3rd, 1922, only 7 days from the first strike to circulation. And they say government projects are always behind schedule and over budget. Well, from the very start, the Mint found that excessive pressure had to be applied to bring out the full design on the coin, and the dies broke very rapidly. On January 10th, 1922, the production had to be put on hold, and they had to switch from high relief to low relief. About 32,400 high relief 1922 peace dollars were minted, but all of them were melted down, except one. One circulated example surfaced years later. Also, 1922 high relief proof dollars occasionally appear up on the market. It's believed that there's about 6 to 10 of them in existence. I've heard that in the December 21st, 1921 edition of the New York Herald, they ran an editorial slamming the broken sword design. I requested to get an image of the actual article, but my request required me to go to New York and go to the Schwartzman building at Microform's room 315. Well, I don't live in New York, but here's an excerpt from what I've heard it says. "A sword is broken when its owner has disgraced himself. It is broken when a battle is lost, and breaking it is the alternative to surrendering. A sword is broken when a man who wears it can no longer render allegiance to his sovereign. But America has not broken its sword. It has not been cashiered or beaten, and it has not lost allegiance to itself. The blade is bright and keen and wholly dependable. It is regrettable that the artist would make such an error in this symbolism. The sword is emblematic of justice as well as strength. Let not the world be deceived by this new dollar. The American effort to limit armament and prevent war, or at least reduce its horrors, does not mean the sword is broken." In a 1960 episode of The Twilight Zone called The Fever, the character Franklin is given a silver dollar by a drunk guy who makes him play it on a machine in a Las Vegas casino. It advertises a $10,000 jackpot. He then believes he hears the slot machine calling his name in a monstrous sounding voice. This episode doesn't mention peace dollars, but you can clearly see the jackpot is full of peace dollars. And it is kind of rare to see coins on screen or even in newspaper or anywhere published, because before 1984 with the Reagan versus Times Act, it was illegal to show an actual coin or bill in a newspaper or TV. Also, in the original book It by Stephen King, the kids melt down coins into a slug. But the description of the coin doesn't quite match a Morgan or a peace dollar or even a Steed of Liberty. Uh, Stephen King uses his own imagination a lot. But it seems like it describes a walking half dollar, but also they mention 2 or 3 Susan B. Anthony silver dollars. But Susan B. Anthony dollars were never made of silver, not at all. But here's a couple of excerpts from the book. Get a handful of silver dollars, but you can't do anything with those lousy copper sandwiches the government is trying to pass off as real coins these days. And werewolves and vampires and all the matter of things that squirm in the starlight, it is silver you want. Honest silver. You need silver to stop a monster. Here's another excerpt from the book. Silver dollars, not the fake copper sandwiches, but the real silver dollars, with Lady Liberty dressed in her gauzy robe stamped upon them. And here's one more excerpt from the book. Ben took one of Zach's chisels from the shelf and used a hammer to strike the mold on the cut lines. They opened easily. Two small silver balls fell out. One of them could faintly see a part of a date, 1925. So I'm guessing they were peace dollars, but you can take those clues and make your own assumptions. But it's a fictional novel, so it's all imaginary, so it doesn't really matter about being precise. So as you can see in this chart, the stars represent key dates. So you can see the 1921 and the 1922 high relief are key. The 1922 high reliefs almost don't exist. But some better dates are the 25S, 26, and 26D. Some key dates are 27, 27D, 27S, and 28. Also 34 and 34S. And some better dates are 28S, 34D, and 35. The 28, the 28S, and the 34S are hard to find in mint state, so look out for those. There's also a 1922 matte finish low relief. There's only about 6 to 10 of those known, but one sold in 2023 for $192,000. There's also some VAMs that go for pretty well. There's a 1934 D over D or double D reverse, and those go for about $12,000. Double motto goes for around $1,300. Double tiara around $1,500. Sometimes you'll have lines through the Liberty, which once sold in 2020 for $5,000, and then some other kind of rarities and mint errors and VAMs. So just look out for those. You can find a whole list of VAMs on NGC or PCGS's websites. Well, I hope you liked this video. It was a lot of information to put together. So please like, subscribe, and continue along this course because it's going to keep getting more and more and more and more in depth. So I'm going to keep going through all of the coins. So this section is going to end up having at least 30 or so chapters that I've already put together on paper.